The time is 23 minutes past 1, and we are just heading into our Ash in October segment.
Wee.
Yay.
We'll be chatting to Lily Ingram when we get back off the next bracket. I might just let you know a little back history of Ash in October, just to kind of fill you in if you're not familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So Ash in October, they were a bit of a new wave influenced synth pop group from Brisbane, forming in 1986 and played until 1990, and comprised Lily Ingram, Robert Draycott, Richard Fenny and Paisley Hadley. They helped shape the fledgling electronic music scene in Brisbane, performing and recording when electronic music wasn't widely accepted in the scene here in Brisbane at the time. So they released a string of singles and EPs, and they've just released a new album now, last month, called One. That's been released on Lily Ingram's own label, Music Hoarders United.
Yeah.
So so we'll be chatting to Lily very shortly. We're just going to hear a couple of tracks off the new album, and stay tuned. Hi, guys. You're
Hi.
tuned to Synthesesia.
Yes, you are.
And we have just been listening to a couple of tracks by Ash in October, Something New, and Games We Play off the new album that's just come out recently called One. And we're very lucky to have Lily Ingram from Ash in October on the phone speaking to us today about this new release. Are you there, Lily?
I am. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Lily. Excuse me.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Because we were chatting and you mentioned, because you were bringing out this new release, that we could have a little chat about it on air and just to have a bit of tell a few stories about where it's come from and all that kind of thing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we just jump into it? What was the motivation for you to start making electronic music in Brisbane in the mid 1980s, Lily?
Wow.
I know it's a pretty
It was a
loaded
long
question
time ago.
to start off with as well.
I think it really started, I was at school and I was about 14, I think, and a friend of mine, Robert, he bought a little Casio VL-tone keyboard, and we were listening to people like Howard Jones and Thompson Twins and Eurythmics at that time, lots of sort of British electro music, and he had this little keyboard, and it was really exciting, and we kind of got it into our heads that maybe we could sort of write some songs. So I got one as well. I got the same thing, this little Casio VL-tone, and we just started writing music.
Right, and how old were you at that point as well?
I think we were 14 when we started doing that, and then when we were about 15, we started actually recording some songs on a 4-track recorder.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and we put a few things out. And at that time, 4ZZZ sort of got on board and started playing these little, songs that we were writing, and it just sort of continued on from there, really.
Wow.
So you've had like a bit of a connection with the station here for 4ZZZ for quite a long time, then, by the sounds.
Yeah, well, sort of back in the day, they were, the big supporters of us. Brisbane certainly wasn't known for electronic music at that time, so it was sort of hard to get a look in, really. But 4ZZZ, for some reason, were just on board with it, and they would invite us in for interviews, and they played all of our music, and they were great.
They're ahead of the curve, then, were they?
They knew what was up, for sure.
Still are.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's cool. So you went in for an interview at the age of 15? Is that right?
Yeah, we used to go in while we were still at school. We'd sort of go in. There used to be a show called The Demo Show on Monday nights, I think it was on, and they would sort of invite us in all the time to play the newest little things that we'd recorded.
That's so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I guess being that age, that's quite early to be forming an interest in, electronic equipment and music.
I think really the reason we were interested in electronic music was just because it was accessible to us. We could buy, we bought these little Casio keyboards for nothing, and we didn't need to know how to play an instrument. To know how to play a guitar, you have to practice and do stuff. But a Casio keyboard, you just press a few buttons.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So that was the attraction of going down that path, really, I think. Plus, we were just listening to a lot of electronic music.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a conscious decision. It's just how it was.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back then, when you were still in high school, so you were called something different, weren't you?
We were using the name Prod and the Moon Baby.
And where does that name originate from? What is the meaning behind it?
I have no idea.
Right. I love that name. It's a cool name.
Actually, I think about it, like, every time I think about Ash in October or Prod and the Moon Baby, I'm like, what are these names mean?
Names,
Like, what is the meaning behind them? Yeah.
Very poetic names. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really good to get some background on that. Thanks, Lily. And we're going to head into a couple of tracks off your new album.
Okay.
We're going to hear Turning Pages and It Will Come.
Great.
So these are both demos, demo versions of tracks that you released in the 80s, is that right?
Yeah, well, the whole one album is really like the earliest demos that we recorded.
Right.
You know, there's been sort of quite a bit of interest in Ash in October in the last couple of years, and people message me all the time wanting to hear more stuff, and I thought, well, let's just put it all out. So
Absolutely.
the one album is one because it's the first. It's the first of all the demos that were recorded, and then I hope to put out another album soon called Two. And
wow, that's so exciting.
I'm just going to put out. Yeah, we're just going to put out all the songs as, you know, in the order that they were recorded, really.
That is so
amazing.
exciting. What an
Really
awesome
cool.
project.
Yeah.
Definitely going to play some more of that. And,
Yeah. We
now-
can't wait.
Yeah, we can't wait to hear it.
Yeah.
But definitely have to stay up to date with that one for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Okay.
I've been turning pages without
Hey guys, you are tuned to 4ZZZ 102.1 and you're listening to Synthesesia.
You are, yes.
Indeedy.
And we have a special guest. We've got Lily Ingram with
You
us.
sure do. Are you there, Lily?
I am. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, you're back with
Hi.
us. So, we just wanted to ask you a little bit more, like kind of some context for all this music that you were making back in the 1980s in Brisbane. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what the climate was like in Brisbane for electronic music and like how you felt like your music was received?
Do you want me to be honest about it?
Yes,
please. Brutally honest.
Brutally honest.
Well, it really wasn't a very easy place to be making electronic music because the scene in general, the music scene in general, was quite small, and there weren't a lot of venues. It was okay if you were a covers band, but if you were making original music, there just weren't a lot of venues in general. And then electronic music just wasn't something that really happened here at that stage. So the handful of bands that were doing it weren't really... I was going to say they weren't accepted, but it was more that people just didn't understand what the hell you were doing. They just didn't get it.
Yeah.
You know, particularly if you didn't have a drummer. You know, we just used to use a drum machine, so people would come to see you and they'd be going, "Where's your drummer? Where's your drummer?" You know, that they just didn't really get it.
Yeah.
And the sound engineers didn't get it either. They didn't know how to mix an electronic band. So, you know, you'd play and half the time you'd sound terrible because they just didn't really know what to do with it.
Yeah, right.
And so it was sort of a bit difficult, really. Again, that's really where 4ZZZ were good for us because they sort of would invite us to play at, you know, all the different events and things that they had on. But, you know, without that, there would have been very few places for us to play live. There was a place called The Outpost in the Valley that was, you know, really all guitar bands, and every now and then they'd put us on. But that was, you know, a dodgy little place, and that was pretty typical, really. Most of the venues were just dodgy little places that didn't have any money. So, the PAs weren't good, and it was difficult. And the other thing that was really difficult as well was just equipment in those days was dodgy, you know. I mean, these days you can just have sort of it all on a laptop and hit go, but in those days you had thousands of leads connecting all your keyboards and drum machines and things together, and it was just all very unreliable. So you'd be guaranteed that at some time during your performance something wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Unpredictable.
Oh. That's stressful. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I can imagine.
Well, I mean, it sounds like 4ZZZ have really been like so supportive of you right from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, if they hadn't shown some interest, I think that we really wouldn't have pursued it the way we did. There just would have been no point because no one would have heard us and there wouldn't have been any gigs for us to play.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I read on somewhere that you were describing the scene back then as being very like dominated by like pub rock. That kind of vibe, like you were saying, like covers bands and like that kind of stuff, like just pub bands.
Yeah, that was, you know, they were really the only sort of bands that got paid. That's for sure.
That's really interesting because I don't know if you listened a few weeks ago. We spoke to Irena Zero.
Yeah.
And also we've spoken to Ursula Colley from Mining Music.
Mining Music.
Yeah, and it's like because they have kind of both said similar things about the electronic music scene in Brisbane back then. Did you ever kind of play alongside them, or did you kind of know about them?
Well, I don't think we played with those guys. To be honest, I think they were sort of doing live gigs a year or two before we came onto the scene.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
We were certainly big fans of Ironing Music. In fact, I can remember the moment that I saw their EP in Skinny's Records and buying it. I remember standing at the counter holding it to buy it. So
wow.
Oh, that's nice.
That was 1985.
Yeah.
That's so nice. Yeah.
Ursula will be thrilled with that.
Shout outs to Ursula and for Irena if you're listening.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's like really awesome to hear that there was at least like a small window of kind of opportunity for electronic groups back in the
And you
1980s.
really
the
took
good thing
advantage
about
of it
the
too.
good- the good thing about all of that was that because there was only a handful of people doing it, we're remembered. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you guys know who we are,
Yeah.
but there
Yeah.
was, there were hundreds of guitar bands, and a lot of those just faded into obscurity. No one
Absolutely.
knows the names of them, but people know who we were.
Yeah, it's very
That's
true.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
Mm.
that can be like a draw point of Brisbane in a sense that, some people will say that there's not as much going on here, in comparison to Melbourne.
Yeah,
But
Mm.
that you can actually kind of use that to your advantage. There's a lot of space to exist, which can be really great.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
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 And we are so lucky to have the radio station 4ZZZ here that's been supporting musicians like yourself
Yeah.
for like literally decades.
Yeah.
And keeping this like underground music scene
And we're
kind
still
of
doing
happening.
it.
We're still doing it
Yeah.
Yay.
So it's cool that it's kind of come full circle and that we're here on 4ZZZ now,
Yeah.
like the next gen type thing. And, we're still listening to your music.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
still awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's awesome for us to be played on the radio 30 years or whatever it is, after we made those recordings. It's just amazing.
Definitely. Another really good reason to support the station if you're listening and you're not a subscriber, because, here's another example of our
Yeah.
work as a community radio station in Brisbane.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've got a track that you sent to me before the show today, Lee, that is a live version of a track called Sex Machine.
Okay. Well, look, that is a prime example of equipment not working.
Okay. That's okay.
If you listen to that song, you'll notice that there's a kick drum and there's a snare drum, but there are no hi-hats or any other drums. And that's because on the day we came into 4ZZZ to do our live-to-air show, and something went weirdly wrong with our drum machine, and it would only play a kick and a snare drum.
It sounded fine to me when I listened to it yesterday.
Well,
so.
it does, but
Human error. Sometimes it actually, maybe it's the simplicity of the drums is kind of what makes the live version, really raw and awesome. So
yeah, it's definitely raw, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We love that raw sound though.
Yeah.
Suitable for Sex Machine.
Yeah. We like it raw. So, without further ado, Sex Machine live at 4ZZZ back from 1988. Ash in October.
Yay.
Enjoy, guys. Hey guys, you're back on Synthesesia on 4ZZZ. The time is
1:57.
1:57. And we have Lily Ingram on the line from cult, busy synth pop group Ash in October.
Hey, Lily.
Hello.
Hello. So, yeah. So we just heard just then another track off the new album called What's So Wrong. So that's another one from back in the day. That's been
that's one of the early demos.
And it's come out again on this new album One that's just come out in the last month or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think maybe we could just ask you a little bit about this new album. You've brought it out on your own music label, which is called Music Hoarders United.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'd sort of had, I just said before, there's sort of been a lot of interest in the Ash in October stuff, and people keep asking me if they can, hear old demos, and so I just thought it was time to just sort of put it all out so people could hear it. So we've done it on a limited edition CD or digital downloads from, the usual places, and it's also up on Spotify. So we just wanted to make it available for people to hear, and I think it's got 14 songs on it. And yeah, it's the earliest demos that we recorded, and it's the first of several albums. That's the plan anyway. We're planning on having this one, and then some of the next demos and better quality recordings, and probably an album of live recordings as well, because we seem to have quite a few of those, which aren't too bad.
Yeah, that sounds great. What a great project you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice to just have all the songs out there, really.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned a little bit before that it seems like you've had a little bit more of a resurgence in the interest in your music, kind of in the last few years or so.
Yeah, I mean, people just didn't really get it at the time. It just was the wrong thing at the wrong time, I think. But we continued anyway, and I don't know why, but there just seems to be a resurgence of that stuff. People are really interested in the sound, and people are interested in the process of how we actually made it at the time, like the equipment we used, and I think that's because it's just really different now. I mean, you can just sort of sit at home with a laptop and make stuff that sounds amazing now, but back in the day, equipment was expensive, and you had to have a whole bunch of different keyboards, and you had to go into a proper recording studio and use 1-inch or 2-inch tape and all sorts of stuff. It was a long and difficult process, and at the end of the day, you came out with something that sounded pretty average.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot more room for trial and error these days if you're trying to produce music or put something out. Yeah,
you don't have to have a lot of knowledge. You can just fiddle around and get something that sounds amazing. Back then, you had to really know what you were doing, and that that really shows on all of our songs as well. I think they're raw and they're interesting, but they sound pretty bad. Well, and that's part of the interest in it, I think. You can hear all the bung notes and the bad phrasing and
it's authentic.
It's just
perfection is boring as well. It's things that are, especially in an audio kind of sense. There's even settings that you can do when you are producing music to kind of add in more human swing or error, because that if everything is too precise, it becomes too boring to listen to. So I think that is music from the 80s that is really authentic in just laying stuff down. That's kind of what everyone wants to achieve.
I think it's definitely come back the other way now, because we can make the most precise music ever, mathematical robotic music
with 20
but it's that's it's the easiest thing to make now,
absolutely,
whereas people want that human
Yeah.
feeling.
Where's the soul?
Yeah.
Yeah, the soul.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think that's the big interest in what we were doing is, you know, it was exciting. It was exciting to be working that way.
For sure. And you had the split album Brisbane, which was released last year on Mothball Records.
That's right, on vinyl, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really sort of when a lot of the new interest started in what we were doing, because I'm just trying to think of the timeline. I know the Ironing Music album was reissued around then as well.
Yeah.
And at that time, you know, there was interest in them, and then I think that sort of generated a bit more interest in older Brisbane music as well, just the Ironing Music album coming out again.
For sure.
And then I'm not sure how I got in touch with the Mothball Records people, but I can't remember how that happened. But anyway, they were interested, and a few other labels were interested as well. People were sort of asking me if we'd be interested in having the music out on record again, and George, who's the guy that runs Mothball Records, was just a really nice guy, and I liked him, so I was sort of keen for him to do it, and I just handed over all the demos, and there was a lot of demos. There was like 50 or 60 songs. I just said, here, just take these and do what you think's best, and he chose a few and put out the record.
And
That's great.
Yeah, and that's so amazing. It's funny because I was actually having a look online as well. I was looking at that release, and it's stocked on Juno Records and Red Eye Records, which are two really big distributors from overseas. But then you've got like Dishonored, which is like a newish kind of record store out of France, and Bordello a Parigi, which is from Italy. And it's pretty amazing that this music is now reaching an international audience of such high kind of, you know, caliber as well. You know, it's definitely like a record that collectors are kind of keen to get their hands on, or they know about, and which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I know Mothball Records, they work through a European distributor, so all the records would have been distributed all throughout Europe, and that's mostly the people that have heard it.
That's so awesome, isn't it? That it's reaching like people on the other side of the world.
Well, I think that's just incredible, considering it was, you know, like some, you know, music that came out of Brisbane and didn't really, you know, have, you know, I'm sure back when it was first made, the idea that, you know, 30, 40 years later, it was going to be, you know, in record stores over in Europe, you know.
Well, that's right. I mean, at the time, we were just sort of excited and hoped that you know, a handful of people in Brisbane would hear it and would like it. You know, we had no idea that 30 years later, people in Europe would be buying it.
That's so amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine if you could go back in time and tell yourself that this was going to be happening.
Yeah. I'd love to go back in time and tell myself lots of things would be happening.
Well, I certainly wouldn't have believed back then that I'd be sitting here now and be 50. How did that happen?
Definitely.
Wow. So we're going to hear a track now off that Mothball Records release called Brisbane that came out last year. And we've got a track from Prod and the Moon Baby, which is your initial name. So from the kind of...
that's the demos we made when we were still at school.
So it's an earlier track. But I noticed that some of the tracks on that one that you've also put them on the new album One as well. So...
Yeah, just different versions, I think, are they? Or
yeah, I think so.
I don't know. I can't even remember.
Yeah, different versions, like mostly the demo versions. But it's just interesting to hear the different kind of iterations of the same music. So we'll get into it. This is No More Looking Worried by Prod and the Moon Baby.
Great.
No more looking worried, no more looking sad, no more looking worried.
Close Your Eyes. That was another track off Lily Ingram's and Ashen October's new album One, which is out now on Music Hoarders United label. And so we've got Lily Ingram on the line here, hopefully.
I'm still here.
Yeah, still here.
Fading fast.
Oh, are you? Well, we'll keep things quick. We're going to wrap it up pretty soon. We just wanted to kind of ask you, you mentioned a little bit earlier about what was in store for Ashen October. You're going to release a series of releases.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be another, 2 or 3 albums. There's certainly a lot of tracks that we recorded, so I hope to sort of go through them all and pick out the ones that I think are interesting.
Totally.
And put them out.
Yeah.
We're so excited to hear that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And do you have any further plans for, like, what's in store for Music Hoarders United as well?
We've got an EP coming out in September, which is of a guy in London called Lost James.
Okay.
He's doing really interesting stuff, not electronic. It's just basically him with the piano. Actually, it's a bit of electronic stuff in the background. It's quite interesting. He's a brilliant songwriter, really, really amazing guy. So that's coming out. And then in October, we've got an album coming out by a guy called Frank Lee, who's a Brisbane songwriter, who's actually me.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that's you, isn't it? Yeah.
So I hope to do that in October. And then,
cool.
And then after that, there's another old 80s Brisbane synthpop band that we're hoping to put an album out of theirs as well.
What's that?
Oh.
But I'm not going to say who it is yet.
Oh, secret.
Well, I'm sure once that's out,
we're going to hear about it.
We'll be playing it.
Oh, we'll be plugging it hard.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
It's really good stuff. I'll just say that, really good. They had a couple of singles out in the 80s that were fantastic. So
cool.
I'm sure our listeners now as well are trying to
figure out
who it is.
Yeah.
You're like
looking through their collections.
I'll give you a clue. The first single they put out was called "The Most Innocent Person I Know."
Oh,
okay.
That's a good clue.
You can Google.
We're about to Google it right now. Don't you worry.
We've got computers right in front of us.
Cool. Well, that's so exciting. You've got so much planned. That's real, like jam-packed kind of next couple of months.
Yeah.
For your label.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Lily, as well, just before we wrap up, that I saw last night, and that there's a SoundCloud for Handsome Manifesto. Is that?
Oh yes.
Is that also a project of yours, like another label?
Yeah, that was an old label.
Old label. Well,
a few years ago.
I saw on there was a lot of Prod and the Moonbaby tracks that I hadn't heard. And they sounded like a lot more recent. And I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah, well, most of those tracks were songs that were written back when we were 14 or 15. But then I had this idea that I wanted to actually re-record them and make them sound good.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. So I don't know how many tracks I did, but I recorded a few of those old songs and and was going to do something with them, but I don't know. They're just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They might come out or they might not.
I just thought that they sounded really cool. I was listening to them last night on the bus, and I was like, wow, like maybe I should play some of them today, but I didn't put them in. But I reckon we'll definitely play some, and I would love to hear some more of that kind of stuff released. It sounded really cool.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll talk to you off air.
Okay, all right. All the secret plans. All right, well, we might wrap up then. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Lily.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Well,
Lily.
thank you, and thanks for all the interest. It's really great of you guys.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
And if anyone would like to know more about Ashen October or Prod and the Moonbaby, you can check out the Music Hoarders United Bandcamp. And it's also the new album is also available on Spotify and iTunes. So we're going to...
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll just finish up the segment with a couple of further tracks from the new album.
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
All alone.